Obviously, it's unideal, although not entirely expected, that costs would increase in this inflationary environment. Meaning, though, at the end of the day, this is going to be $13 million more than we thought it was and that we planned for. Madam Treasurer, I believe you have some thoughts around how the city will approach securing or planning for this additional allotment of funds. So I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you, Your Worship. I wish to, so tonight, tagging on to Tim's presentation, I wish to lay out a tentative plan on how we will address the construction cost increase on the multiplex project that resulted from inflationary impacts. To begin, I wish to note, and I know you all agree, that the fact that the project cost has increased does not come as a surprise. As Tim noted in his presentation, the initial budget did not include an escalation contingency due to the unprecedented unpredictability of pricing and procurement in the construction industry. In other words, we knew costs would go up, but it was impossible to know by how much. So the plan to address the shortfall is as follows. We'll take an additional $1.5 million from General Capital Reserve. The city has long maintained very healthy reserves, and this has put us in a solid financial position to support a project of this size. Although we hope to maintain a minimum balance of $5 million in this account, we will need to drop that threshold to $3.5 million for the next 2 to 3 years, and then work towards bringing the balance back up to $5 million once the multiplex is built. An additional $2 million will come from borrowing, and I'll remind Council that, as mentioned earlier, we knew we would be here one day. So with that in mind, we had sought authorization in March of this year to borrow an additional $7 million as a buffer. Even with this additional borrowing, we are within debt limits and debt ratio levels that are consistent with other cities in New Brunswick. I'm also proposing that any interest income earned on our capital reserve and any operational surpluses be funneled into the multiplex project, and this is estimated to total $3.7 million over the next 3 years. We should also amend the 2024-2028 Canada Community Building Fund plan to set aside the 2027 and 2028 allocations to the multiplex project. This would equate to $2.8 million. And we will pursue further funding support from federal and provincial governments through various infrastructure programs to make up the remaining amount. If we are not successful in securing funding through these programs, we can adjust the amount we borrow accordingly. At the end of the day, this is a hurdle. It's not a perfect situation, as this most certainly will impact the amount of capital funds available for other capital projects over the next few years, including asset renewal projects planned to address our infrastructure deficit. The options I provided do not increase operational expenditures, therefore I do not foresee a need to increase the tax rate. And on a positive note, fundraising is going extremely well. Expressions of interest are above expectations, and exciting announcements will be forthcoming in the next few weeks. Construction is still on course to be completed in the fall of 2026, and we will have a much-needed, beautiful, modern, recreational facility that this entire community can be proud of. And I'll take any questions if you have them.
Yeah, thanks, everybody. Thank you, Madam Treasurer. Not sure if the floor is open for questions, or yeah, Councillor Duplessis.
Thank you. Through your chair, perhaps to Tim. When do we expect to kind of see firm kind of 100% complete numbers? You indicated that a certain percentage of the tendering process is wrapped up, but in terms of pointing to a calendar, when can we expect that we don't have any more surprises?
There's about 85% of the anticipated project value that's committed now. Within that, there is a construction contingency of about $2.5 million for unforeseen items that would arise on a project of this scale, and that is aligned with what is normal for a project of this size. Of the remaining 15% to be procured, there are a couple of more significant portions of that we're looking at procuring in the end of this year into early January. Some remaining site work as well as some landscaping components. That those trades are very busy right now, so we're looking at a time where they might be a little bit more friendly with their desire for getting some work early in the next 2 years. There will be, so that will take us to a fairly significant level of procurement, but there'll be a number of items, especially in the on the owner side of things, office furniture, TVs, screens, things like that, that will be procured right up to, and in some cases, looking at even after the September 2026, depending on operational needs. But that represents a very small portion of the overall work and cost. I can't give you a number right offhand, but I would estimate that we'll be at 95+% procurement by spring of next year.
Thanks, Councillor. And I appreciate, thank you, Mr. McLeod, for the presentation, and Madam Treasurer as well. You know, again, in this inflationary environment, it's not surprising, but appreciate, first of all, the planning that's gone on by council and staff for well over a decade for this project, and having the room to make some maneuvers. Of course, this means some things will happen later or longer than we'd like them to, as you mentioned, but we have the ability to absorb for the most part. And I would also just focus on the portion of two final portions to what both of you said this evening. One is that this is a needed facility. This in and of itself is asset management, and renewing and replacing several facilities with one new centralized modern facility, replacing some of the oldest in the province. This is going to be a world-class facility for our community. We're building what we needed and only what we needed, and we'll have that for generations and decades to come at the end of this in a year and a half, or just over 2 years, I guess. And secondly, you know, we will look forward to approaching the other levels of government for additional support, whether it be for this project or for other capital projects, so we can continue to divert some of our own funds. You know, when we received the funding partnerships from both levels of government in the first place, we were underfunded proportionally for the program that we received funding under. So hopefully with a new government in place now, provincially, who has indicated in the early days they understand that municipalities are underfunded. They understand that the fiscal reform part of the reform isn't done yet. And so we'll continue to advocate with all of our provincial colleagues for the structural reform, but in the meantime, we'll look to have conversations about additional support given these escalations. So